the National Foundation for Restoration. Or this is actually the chapter on Moses' course. When you look at this history from Adam, 1,600 years, and then it came to Noah's family during the time of the flood judgment. That was also after 400 years comes Abraham. And then together with the united family of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that's a period of 120 years. And then Jacob went to Haran. This became the period of the divided family for 40 years. And then after 21 years, he came back. When he came back, that was the time that Jacob and Esau reunited. And then another 40 years is the time of Joseph in preparation of entering into Egypt. That's another story. When Joseph, one of the sons of Jacob, was sold to an Egyptian, ultimately ending up to become one of the officers of the Pharaoh, to become the prime minister of Egypt. There they settled in a place called Goshen, and they multiplied to so many people. And then the Egyptian felt threatened by the nature of the Jewish people. So they decided finally that so that they would not be going against us or aligning with their enemies, they made them into slaves. So this is the period of the slavery in Egypt. And that is the time, after the end of that period, that Moses appeared. So, from the family level, because of Jacob's victory, it entered now in expanding this foundation, which is one on the victory of Jacob, from the family to the national level. Actually, Father said that not so many people can actually understand and explain the course of Moses, but in studying the course of Moses, we can understand many secrets about how God is restoring a nation. So this is now in the providence to restore a nation, a chosen nation for the Messiah to come. God used the victorious model in the family level foundation, expanding that to the national level for the foundation of the Messiah. Even though God cannot send the Messiah in the time of Jacob with the victorious foundation of faith and substance, but then he used Jacob as the model course to subjugate Satan. That means, because Jacob subjugated Satan, whoever follows Jacob's course can likewise subjugate Satan. This is the reason why when you look at the patterns of subjugation of Satan, it seems that the central figures after Jacob actually followed the same course. As God is wanting to fulfill His will, the ideal of creation, He can only but accomplish His 95 because this is part of His absolute will. He created man for a special role and a special purpose. He cannot just bring man, He has to make man accomplish something. That is the 5%. And then, Jacob was able to show us a successful model of how this 5% can actually be realized. That's why God established Jacob as the model course for many things. He might have established that on the family level, but God now is going to use the same pattern to make a nation, to create God's nation. So God takes responsibility as the creator and parent, that is His 95%. But even though God takes responsibility, Satan will not readily surrender to human beings. He did not even surrender to God until he actually was subjugated by Jacob through his victory. Now he is going to use that, and now because Jacob was able to accomplish the foundation of substance, it is through the natural surrender, he will now use the same course to bring Satan to his natural surrender. So So it's not by force, it is not by power, but as I said, God can only win back His rights of the creation when man will fulfill his part. It is not Satan who kicked God out. It was man who installed Satan to that position. So in order to remove Satan, man should fulfill his part to overcome Satan and bring him to surrender. Since Jacob did that, this became the model course. Kaya Jacob's course became the model of Moses, ultimately became the model of the Messiah, Jesus. This is one thing that many Christians also did not understand and did not discover despite the effort to study the Bible. That Jesus is following Moses and Moses is following Jacob. The course of Jacob became the model for Jesus' course. But even though they were just following each other, it is not a wasteful repetition because it is expanding into a higher stage. Moses in the national, Jesus in the world stage. This is also called the age of symbol, the age of image, and the age of substance. So let's take up some example. How in a way did Jacob set the course for Moses and Jesus? Through the restoration of numbers. Jacob spent 3 days and then he left Haran. Moses spent 3 days and then he left Egypt. Jesus had 3 days when he was dead before he resurrected. Coincidence? No. Providential. Jacob had 12 sons. That's why Moses should have 12 sons. But because Moses married a woman that is not really according to God's desire for him to marry, he could only establish 12 tribes. That is why Jesus also had 12 apostles. Jacob did not only have 12 sons, he had also 70 kinsmen or family members. When you look at Moses, he appointed 70 elders, especially as they left for the Exodus, in order to lead the 600,000 men and then excluding the women and children to organize. So the same numbers we can see in Moses, and then it appeared also in Jesus. Again, it's not coincidence. It is actually principle. Numbers are part of God's creation. When numbers were lost, numbers have to be restored. That's why we see a number pattern repeating in the history. Jesus had 12 apostles, and also his second circle is the group of 70. Some Bible call it the 72 disciples. But nevertheless, it is patterned after Jacob. Not only that, mother and son cooperation. It's important, this is a very important condition. Jacob was helped by his mother, Rebekah, when she actually made Jacob, instead of Esau, receive the blessing from the father Isaac. Did Moses have the support of his mother? Same. When the Egyptians were controlling the population of the Jews, they were killing all the male children, the mother of Moses protected him by wrapping him in clothes and then putting him on a basket, and then he waded him in the Nile River where it was discovered by a princess in the palace. Not only that, but he saved his life from certain death, but the mother of Moses applied as a parang nanny or mother, what do you call that? Nurse, no? To take care of Moses inside the palace. Moses, born a Jew, but he was raised up in an Egyptian palace. But because the mother was there carrying her, there was a lot of Jewish education also that he could receive. That is mother and son cooperation. When we look at the story of Jesus, if not for Mary, who is the mother of Jesus, Jesus would have been one of the children who were killed because of the direction of King Herod when he ordered all the innocent children to be killed. Because when the three wise men passed through the palace of Herod, he was informed that there was a king that was born. How can that be? The Pharaoh's son, the king's son, should be the next king. But another king was born. So the King Herod was so angry, he has to order his soldiers to kill all the children from 2 years and below, the death of the innocent. But because God informed the angel to inform Mary, Mary brought the baby out of Bethlehem, and they went into Egypt. And it was only when Herod died that he returned, or she brought back Jesus to Jerusalem. So if not for that, then Jesus would have been dead. What is that? It is the pattern that Moses had, but Moses also have that as a pattern that Jacob initiated. Mother and son cooperation. Again, it is not coincidence. In order to restore the foundation of substance, Jacob had to buy it through yung tinatawag na bread and stew. This is actually the lentil and the pottage, we say, through food. In order to gain the unity of unity of the people during the time of Moses, in the foundation of substance, it was also food, manna and quail that they have eaten in the second course in the wilderness. Every morning they wake up, there is manna, and also there is quail. So there is food that they have provided to them by God. This is a very similar pattern. In the time of Jesus also, he gave his farewell to his disciples, saying, I give you my body, I give you my blood, through the bread and through the wine, to restore the unity of the disciples, also to become one with him, communion with Jesus Christ. And also, very interesting is what happened after the body. When Jacob died, his body was embalmed and preserved for 40 days. Because Jacob's body is as a victorious man is holy, God actually have interest even in the dead physical body. So it is preserved for 40 days. Moses' body, actually he died at the mountain going down to the Jordan River where he was buried. But when the Jewish people who actually settled in Canaan came back to retrieve his body, he could not anymore be found. The body of Moses disappeared according to the Jewish tradition. But then in the Bible, there is a story that the dead body of Moses was fought over by Satan and the angel Michael. And finally, it was taken by Michael and it was placed somewhere where it can be protected, it could be guarded by the angel. So they have a very similar interesting story about what happened to their bodies. How about Jesus? When Jesus was crucified and he died on the cross, a man took him out of the cross and bought a tomb for him to be buried. His name also is Joseph, from the place of Arimathea. And then he was buried in that tomb, but because of the rumors that his disciple will take his body and then claim that he resurrected from the dead, they put guards to guard the entrance to the tomb. But 3 days into the death of Jesus Christ, there was a big earthquake, and then there was a flash of light that blinded the guards, and when they were able to see again, the stone that covered the tomb was rolled, and the tomb was open. Not only that the tomb was open, when they checked where he was lying, his body was no longer there. Of course, that is one of the mystery of Jesus. And then the people were saying that his body was stolen by the Jewish people. And then many Christians now believe that Jesus resurrected not only in the spirit, but also in the flesh. But if you know that Jacob set the pattern for Jacob set the pattern for Moses, and Moses set the pattern for Jesus, we have enough understanding of what really happened to the body of Jesus. As Moses was taken by God through the angel to be placed in a better place where it can be protected and guarded, the same thing for Jesus. His body was actually retrieved by the angel and placed. That's why in some of the stories of the resurrection, the first people that they met were angels. Peter and Mary were talking to the angels. Why do you seek the dead? Why do you seek the living from the dead? No? There were angels in the scene when they discovered that the tomb was empty. And also, there was no very clear witness. Out of the 4 Gospels who talk about the resurrection of Jesus, it was not very consistent. They were talking about different witnesses, and they were not there when the stone rolled. So this is something that the Bible wrote about, but they're not very sure about. All they know, the body disappeared. Why? In order to follow the model course. Because Jacob's course is the model of subjugating Satan. They also have a parallel course. From the evil world, they went to the good world. Jacob, he stayed for 21 years in the idol-worshipping place of Haran before he came back victorious with his family and animals and reconciled with his brother when he came back to Canaan. That's why the same story, Moses stayed in Egypt for 40 years until finally he left Egypt and then he went to Canaan. Although he did not actually end up in Canaan, but he left Egypt. And it was one of the people who spied out who actually brought them to Canaan. Jesus' whole life has been a story of how to bring man from the fallen world to the ideal world. So again, this is something that only principle can explain. No other theology, no other explanation can explain what is happening. The Old Testament is actually a code of God's providence. It is not the actual events of all the things, but this is God's revelation to Moses. So when Moses was writing it down, he was writing down the most important points that God wanted him. And according to what is recorded in the Bible, it's interesting, we can see all of this, and it's following a certain pattern. Also, Jacob subjugated evil when he actually buried the idol of Laban under the tree. And finally, Rachel was honest enough to tell him that she was keeping the idol that was not discovered by the men of Laban. That's why Moses also had to do the same or similar pattern. When he saw the golden calf as he was coming down, he was so angry, he ordered the destruction of this golden calf, which is parallel to Jacob's destroying the symbol of Satan. Here, the golden calf is the symbol of Satan. Jesus, his words and his power has always been to end evil. So there are many more, but I think we did not put all of that here. So needless to say, Moses set the pattern for Jesus, but Moses also followed the pattern of Jacob. That way, it was Jesus also who was following Jacob's course. And from the book of Deuteronomy, God will raise up for you a prophet like me. Moses is the one who wrote the book of Deuteronomy. There will be a prophet like me. Actually, that is referring to the Messiah. You must listen to him. So the Jewish people, Jesus actually came as a prophet like Moses. Jesus follows the model course of overcoming Satan. It is also read in John 5:19. The Son can do nothing by himself. He can only do what he sees his Father is doing. Because whatever the Father does, the Son also does. What does that mean? The Son is following a pattern. The Son is following a course. So Jesus is not pioneering a course. Jesus is following a pattern already set before him by Jacob and Moses on the national level. So here we summarize the courses of Moses. 3 courses, each spanning 40 years each until they reached the land of Canaan. The first course being Moses in the king's palace. There's a difference now between this period and the period before Moses. because now they have entered the national foundation to receive the Messiah. Moses, standing as a central figure, is not just a central figure on the family level, but the central figure on the national level. So many times, Moses was standing representing God. He is God's representative to a nation. Not only that, because of the success of the three providential families from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the age of the sacrificial offering of things ended, and we now enter the age and the era of God's words. Now God can deliver His truth through the words. This was the chance, or this is now a new providence. Gone are the times that the people have to sacrifice an animal, bleed them to death, and burn them. Tapos na yung panahon na yun. It's now based upon the word. That's the offering. And based upon the number 40, which means separation from Satan. So, Moses spent 40 years in the palace from the time his mother brought him to the palace in a basket. These grasses in the Nile River is Egyptians call Moses. That's why he was eventually called by that name. He was taken by one of the princes. And according to, I don't know if it's true, the movie I saw, this princess has been praying for a child because she was childless, so it was like an answered prayer. And so quickly she was adopted and she became one of the princes of Egypt, and then she stayed there for 40 years. And Reverend Ann told us that for a period of 40 years, Moses kept his purity. That is not just a long period of condition, but Moses kept his purity. Being a young man, being a prince, he must be very attractive to women, and also he was trained many arts of fighting, of art, etc. He was the object of many admiration, and many women would like to have Moses as their husband. But then Moses kept his purity despite all the temptation around him. That set the condition of the foundation of faith. After that, then the foundation of substance. There is also a marked difference when we speak about the substance before Moses and after Moses. Moses was leading a new providential age on the national level. So Moses is a central person that the nation should unite with him. Before Moses, there were just two brothers. Moses as the Abel, but when we speak of Cain, the whole nation of Israel. They have to reverse their fallen nature and unite with Moses. Not only that, it is not only through their unity, but they have to make the condition to unite with Moses until they reach the land of Canaan. So it's not just a unity, and then that's the foundation of substance. They have to sustain that unity until they arrive in the promised land of Canaan. So here, after fulfilling the first course, Moses had to fulfill, the foundation of faith in the first course had to fulfill the substance. As he was growing up, he was becoming more and more aware also of his Jewish roots because of his mother and the way he was educated. And then he would always go out to see the plight of his people who are slaves of the Egyptian, building some kind of construction in Egypt. And then one day, he was watching them, and then he saw an Egyptian taskmaster beating an Egyptian guard, a Jewish slave. When he saw, he started to defend the Jewish slave. In the process, he confronted the Egyptian taskmaster. Moses, very quick and very skilled in the art of fighting, he killed the Egyptian taskmaster. This is also called in the principle the providence of the start. Since there are so many people to guide and so many people has to unite, God has to help Moses to begin the foundation of substance. So Moses, it is not his intention to really kill anybody, but he was trying to make and show the Jewish people that he is on their side and that he is the one who's going to lead them out of bondage to the land of Canaan, where there's freedom. So, in doing so, he was trying to initiate the substance that would bring him closer to the leaders of the Jewish people. But then it backfired. What happened is, in as much that Moses wanted to show that he was on their side, the Jewish people, seeing that, they felt that Moses was abusing his power in taking the life of this Egyptian taskmaster. They reported him to the Pharaoh, and Pharaoh was very angry, and he even sought to kill Moses. That's why, if you ask the question whether the people united with Moses at the time, the answer is not. There was no foundation of substance. And that is the reason why the first course that has been built for 40 years inside the palace could not be fulfilled. The people feared Moses, they betrayed Moses to the authorities, and that's why Moses has to escape. The next thing you know, he is out of Egypt and he went to a far land called Midian. So that's why slavery was prolonged, because Moses spent another 40 years in the land of Haran. They were already supposed to be out of Egypt, but Moses stayed in Haran for another 40 years, extending the slavery. And then what they are supposed to embark on, which is a 21-day route, became a much longer route called indemnity, greater indemnity. This is the capital of Egypt, Ramesses. This is the land of Canaan. This is supposed to be their course. This is a period of 21 days by foot. If the Jewish people walk, and they would arrive in Jericho for 21 days. There's now a road that is constructed down here. It takes 6 hours to reach the other side. So it's like a trip from Manila to Baguio, perhaps. But if they walk, then that would take them 21 days. But because even though there was the foundation of substance, faith, the substance should be sustained until they reach Canaan, united with Moses. But because they did not unite with Moses, this did not happen. Moses escaped to Midian, and the first course cannot be fulfilled. And according to the history, they went through the longer route of 21 months. That was the second course. So because of the failure of the first course, the 40 days has to be indemnified. That's why Moses had to stay in the wilderness of Midian for 40 years. From an Egyptian Moses, he became a Moses of the desert, one of the shepherd tribes. He married there, and also he had children, but they were never mentioned in the Bible. They were insignificant as far as his work is concerned, his mission is concerned, because he also married a wrong person. So the second course of Moses, he stayed in Midian for 40 years. It is in Midian that God called him back to Egypt. God spoke to him through the burning bush. You have to go back, bring my people out of Egypt. Moses was hesitant. I'm slow of speech. I'm not very good. I'll give you Aaron to become your messenger. Anyway, he was given all the encouragement. He was given a staff. That's where he received it during the time of the 40 days. So at the end of the 40-day period, Moses came back to Egypt after fulfilling that 40 days, which is to indemnify the first course that failed. By fulfilling the second course, 40 days, he is now ready for the substance. So, again, the people should unite with Moses, and for a greater indemnity, they have to sustain that unity for 21 months via the land of the Philistines. And this is actually where the real providence of Moses' Exodus story began. For the providence of start, Moses went to Egypt, bringing with him 3 miracles from God to make the Egyptians realize that he was not joking, that he was sent by God. And also there were 10 disasters. What were the 3 miracles? The snake, the staff of Moses turned to snake. The Egyptians also did the same. But the staff of Moses that became snakes swallowed the snakes of the Egyptian. According to principle, this is the restoration of Adam. Also, the next miracle was the leprous hand that was placed inside the clothes. And when it came out, it was leprous. When it was brought back and brought back again, it was healed. So this is another sign that Moses showed, indicating or symbolically saying, or symbolism of restoration of Eve. And the third one is the reddening of the Nile River. Egypt is called the gift of the Nile. And they have their livelihood almost entirely from the Nile River. When Moses took water from the Nile and poured it on the ground, it became red. When they look at the river again, it all became red. And according to the principle, this is a symbol of the restoration of children, lineage. So these three miracles were part of the providence of start to convince the Pharaoh, and especially to convince the Jews to unite with him so that they can embark on the Exodus, to leave Egypt, to go to the land of Canaan. But then the Pharaoh was not amused. And that's the reason why there was the 10 calamities. Why 10 calamities? Because Jacob went through 10 times of being tricked by his uncle Laban. And that's why Moses also had to go through this process. That he would actually bring about or bring some kind of calamity to Egypt. And then the Pharaoh, when he could not control and stop it, he would ask Moses to stop it, but then he would make his heart hard again that he would not allow. And finally, the last of these 10 calamities was the plague that went through the land of Egypt. And the Jewish people were told by Moses that they could avoid this plague if they painted the blood of the lamb on their doorpost. So when the plague came, it just passed over their houses. One of the major holidays of the Jewish people is the feast of the Passover. When they woke up that day, they found all their firstborn children and cattle all dead, including the son of Pharaoh Ramses. And so that was like the last straw that broke the camel's back. And ultimately, it was the Pharaoh who even said, you go, you bring your people. And so for 3 days, they organized. From all across Egypt, they went to Ramesses in order to organize. Moses organized them into 12 tribes, and also he appointed 70 elders so that they can move towards out of Egypt to the land of Canaan. So did the people unite? Yes, indeed. They were so amazed by what Moses showed them. They were so amazed that God is working through Moses. But as I said, the substance for all the people is not just to unite with Moses, but to unite with him until they can reach the land of Canaan. And that will be the longer route through the way of the Sinai Peninsula, not the way of the Philistines. The Bible said also, lest they find and see war, they might come back to Egypt. So God gave them to a route of no return, crossing the river, crossing the Red Sea first. So, when they left Egypt, 600,000 men, not yet including the women and the children and the animals that they're bringing. A whole nation on the move, walking on foot. This is God's providence to restore the nation. So the people has to unite with Moses. So after 3 days, they started moving. They came to a land called Sukkoth. And then they continued, and then they are confronted with a block because they have to cross the sea. When they were about to cross that sea, called the Red Sea, Ramesses sent his men and soldiers to pursue this Egyptian. Perhaps he realized what is going to happen to Egypt if we lost all of our slaves because they're going to live. So they pursued, the soldiers pursued. The Jewish people were so afraid. And so Moses prayed, and then God told him to point his staff on the river, And this is one of the most exciting scenes in the movie Ten Commandments. No? When the river, when the Red Sea opened up, and there was a clear path for them to cross the sea by foot. God opened it for them. So the Jewish people were so awestruck. This is really the work of God. Moses is really our leader. Hallelujah. No? And so they were able to cross. When finally all of them were able to cross, the Egyptians tried to pursue them in the same path. But as the last Jew actually crossed over the Red Sea, and then the soldiers were there walking in the middle where the Red Sea split, Moses again showed the power of God by pointing back his staff, and then what happened is the Red Sea closed in on the soldiers, the horses, and the chariots of the Egyptians, drowning much of them. So that actually cut their route from Egypt. And they continued. As they continued, of course, they would run out of supply. The first thing that they ran out is water. And that's why they started to complain. We came here to look for the promised land, the land of flowing milk and honey, and yet we don't have water. So they complained to Moses. So Moses prayed. And then God told Moses, strike the rock. And then when he struck the rock, the water flowed in the middle of the dry desert. It became their salvation. In the New Testament, the rock was Christ. The symbol of the rock is the symbol of Christ in the wilderness. And not only that they ran out of water, they also ran out of food. So when there's a miracle, the Jewish people are so happy and praising Moses and praising God. But when they run out, they start complaining. When they run out of food, they start complaining again. And so Moses prayed again, and the next time they know, they have food to eat. Manna and quail. When they wake up in the morning, there were white things on the ground. Because they don't know how it is called, they call it manna. Jewish manna means what is it. We don't know the name, so it's called what is it. Of course, you know quail. Quail is a small bird, yung pugo sa atin. That is what they eat. So in the middle of the desert, they have no water, but God gave them water. They have no food, God gave them food. But everyday manna and quail is also very tiring. So they started complaining again. This is the story of the Jewish people. They have been they have been witness to benefit, to see the miracles of God. But anyway, they have always been complaining. And then when they came to this tribe of the Amalekites fought them, and Moses again prayed to God, and God's instruction is that you raise your hand and then you will win. So Moses raised his hand, and whenever his hands are raised, he could see the Jewish people winning over the Amalekites. But then it's a long fight, so his arms got weary, he started to bring him down. And so he had to ask people to raise his arms up until the end of the fight. You don't win fights by raising arms or raising hands. But then, this is actually to show that God is going to deliver them. That they have to trust Moses is their leader. God is their deliverer. So they have to believe that. But many times the Jewish people lost faith. Until finally, even God is doubting the Jewish people. And not only the Jewish people, what if Moses also became faithless? So he thought of a way that if this group of people will not fulfill my condition, and they would show faithlessness, there can be another group of people to inherit this. And that is the reason why God gave them an unchanging object of faith. This is a painting depicting they're picking from the wilderness, the manna and the quail. They were also given the instruction, don't take more than you need. There will always be enough every day. But some Jews are pasaway. So they took more than they need. And that's why what happened, it got stale, it got etc. So God wanted them to trust Him only. God is training these people so that they can become the people who can establish a nation, and this country will be my country, and these people will follow only me. So, because of the faithlessness of the Jewish people, an unchanging object of faith becomes necessary. An object will stand in the able position. Because that was supposed to be Moses. But God is afraid of the faithlessness of the people, and even afraid that even Moses might become faithless. But with the tabernacle, it becomes an unchanging Abel. And if this group of people could not do that, then God could easily give this tabernacle to a new group of chosen people who would carry this mission and therefore go to the land of Canaan. This was his intention. The tabernacle represents the unchanging standard of faith, the unchanging Abel position. The tabernacle is like this. There are two areas. One is one is where the Ark of the Covenant is. This is called the most holy place. The other place is called holy place. The Ark of the Covenant is another container which contains the two tablets of stones. This is what we call the tabernacle. It is symbolic Messiah. So God is also training the Jewish people to receive the Messiah. Because when they go to the land of Canaan, when they establish their nation, the Messiah will come. So that they know how to attend the Messiah, they have to attend the tabernacle. If they learn and develop the tradition of attending the tabernacle or the temple, which is the symbol of the temple, then they have to also attend the Messiah. So when the tabernacle is symbolic Messiah, it is not something that they cannot just receive. It requires the same foundation of faith and substance. That's why to receive the two tablets of stone that will be put into the Ark of the Covenant and that will be enshrined in the tabernacle, they need to make the foundation of faith. So, when they came upon the mountain of Sinai, he asked the people to wait, and Moses went up into the mountain. All we know is that Moses did a 40-day fast. But according to the principle that 40-day fast is precisely to make the first course foundation of faith. Because the tabernacle is not just the two tablets, it is not that the ark is not just the tabernacle two chambers, but the tabernacle is actually the symbolic Messiah. So the foundation of faith is necessary. Moses is more than 80 years old. He went into the mountain and did a 40-day fasting condition. At the end of the 40 days, God gave him the two tablets of stone where it was inscribed the 10 commandments. So the 10 commandments represent the first written word of God to man. The Jews call it written by God's own hands, because this is inscribed in rock, and because this is the word that became substance on earth. It is also the symbol of the Messiah, who is the incarnation of the word and the substance of the word. Receiving the tablets, you need to make foundation of faith. So Moses received the two tablets of stone in the mountain after 40 days of fasting. But then after receiving that, God told him to quickly go down because something is happening among the Jews. Because what is happening among the Jews, because Moses said he was going to pray, but they didn't know how long he's going to stay, the Jewish people started to decide that they would like to come back to Egypt. And they decided to make a symbol that the Egyptians can accept them again, because many of the Egyptians also are worshippers of the god Baal. They formed the golden calf as the symbol. We're now here, we're talking about the foundation of faith. So Moses did it successfully. Now we're talking about the substance. The people should unite with Moses in order to receive the tabernacle. This is different from the second course to go to Canaan. This is a first course to receive the symbolic Messiah, the tabernacle. So when Moses came down and saw, they made the golden calf, and the golden calf is the symbol of Baal, and Baal is the symbol of the fertility religion of the Canaanites. The rituals is actually sexual. They have male prostitutes and female priests, and sexual relationship is part of the religious ritual. Moses was so consumed with anger, what happened was he could not control himself. And in anger, he threw the 2 tablets of stones, breaking the 2 tablets of stone. So, according to the principle, this is not justified even because of what the Jewish people did. Because what Moses was carrying from God is symbolic Messiah. This is also the unchanging object of faith as the able position. If Moses prayed to God to punish the Jewish people, then God could have punished the Jewish people or even replaced the Jewish people. But instead of that, Moses made the tabernacle break by throwing it into the ground and breaking it into pieces. This is a serious problem or serious failure. So, because of Moses' anger, the tablets representing the Messiah became broken pieces of rocks. At the time of Moses, because of people's lack of faith, tablets were broken. This foreshadowed the coming of the Messiah. But if the people will have lack of faith, then the 2 tablets, symbolic of the Messiah, can be killed. So Moses created a condition by breaking the tablets of stone that when the Messiah comes, he can get killed. It actually prefigured. So, even though there was a successful foundation of faith, but there was no substance because the people did not unite with Moses when he came down from Sinai. So that leads us to another attempt, the second course to receive the tabernacle. So after Moses told the Jewish people to repent, they pulverized the golden calf, he mixed it up with flour and they drink it. He went back to the mountain to fast a second time. 80-year-old man fasting now for 80 days. And then he finished that. This time, Moses carved it according to the Bible. It's not God who made the 2 tablets and then carved, but it was Moses. So actually, he received so much. Reverend Ann said his 40 days is not just a long fast, but also he was attending a seminar, 40 days, 2 times 40-day seminar. That's why Moses can write the 5 books of the Old Testament, from Genesis to Deuteronomy. So because of that, he can carry again, but this time when he came back, did the people receive him? Yes, the people received him. So there was a successful foundation to receive the tabernacle, symbolic of receiving the Messiah. So they now attended the tabernacle and they carried this tabernacle wherever they go, and they attended it like they would attend the Messiah who is coming in the future. This is a painting depicting how the tabernacle looked like as the Jews would carry it from the time that they left they left Sinai to the place where they're going. So from Sinai, they made a turn towards Canaan and they came upon Kadesh Barnea. And it is in this part that they have actually made a condition of spying. So, because of that, anong nangyari? They went into the land of Canaan, and then, they call it Shittim. They spent 40 days checking out what's happening and what's going on in Canaan. This was actually a foundation of faith. Kasi there was also a failure. That's why merong dahil sa failure of the Jewish people again. That's why fiery serpents bit them, ending up in this failure. So they have to build up a new foundation of faith. And then, after 40 days that they have spied out in the land of Canaan, the 12 men who were sent out to check came back to give the reports. But when they gave the reports, only 2 of them actually gave positive reports. The 2 actually, the other 10 gave negative reports. And because of the situation that they tend to listen to the 10 rather than to the 12, there was widespread disunity towards Moses, and therefore collapsing the foundation of this third course. And that's why the people followed the faithless report. The 40 days that they have spied out in the land of Canaan became a condition of greater indemnity, to spy for 40 years in the land of Canaan, the greater indemnity period. So this is the beginning of the third course to go to Canaan. The first course in the palace failed when the people did not unite with him. They did not go through the 21 days course. The second one, they were able to leave Egypt, but because of the faithlessness of the people after receiving the reports of the spy, it collapsed the second condition. That's why another 40 years is necessary as a third course to restore the failed second course. The people rebelled against Moses and desired to return to Egypt. So, the third course is actually, sa tabernacle pala ito. The third course of the tabernacle is, ito nga, yung 40 days and they have to unite with Moses. But then what happened, no? Hindi ko naayos yung pagkakasunod-sunod. This is actually the time when after they spied out and there was a faithlessness because of the negative reports of the 10 spies, except for Joshua and Caleb who gave positive reports. But it collapsed the second course, and that's why a new foundation to stay for another 40 years, and that would make Moses more than 100 years old after the period of the third 40-year course. So when they set in Kadesh Barnea, they just wandered around this wilderness for 40 years. And much of the first generation who left Egypt died in the wilderness during that time. It was a new generation of Jewish people who actually predominates the number of the Jewish group who is going to the land of Canaan. So after 40 days, they again accomplish the foundation of faith. The third time it is being fulfilled by Moses. Many of the first generation Jews in the wilderness and second generation, much of what's remained with the second generation. For the substance, again, the people should unite with Moses. And then, when they finish this, at a state called Kadesh Barnea, again, when they were when they're about to leave the place of Kadesh Barnea to the land of Canaan, again, the people started to complain about being thirsty. And then, God instructed Moses, like he did in Rephidim, to strike the rock so that the rock can give them water to drink in the middle of the dry desert. But here, something different happened. When Moses struck the rock, and it was flowing water already, he struck it again another time. This is actually a very serious mistake. God said, because you have failed to purify me in the eyes of my people, you will not bring this congregation to the land of Canaan. Moses was scolded for hitting the rock twice. And then Moses tried to bargain. Sabi niya, please let me go. I want to see the place, the beautiful land of Lebanon. What is God's response? God said, speak to me no more about this matter. So again, why is hitting the rock twice a very serious mistake? The rock without water, indicating like a dead rock, is like Adam who fell. Hitting the rock by God's representative is like a condition that would revive the rock, and therefore from a fallen Adam it becomes a restored Adam. The rock that is flowing with water is the symbol of the Messiah, as even explained in the book of Genesis. The rock was Christ, according to Isaiah. So this is what God said, because you did not trust me enough, you will not bring this community to the land. It is Moses' intention and desire, even the very purpose of his life, to leave Egypt and to go to the land of Canaan. And finally, God is telling him he cannot go. And why is that mistake very serious? Because striking the rock a second time is not a simple mistake. The first strike is instruction of God. But because Moses was so angry at the people who were always complaining, he was already very tired and very old, and he wanted to go to the land of Canaan. He was affected by that, and that's why he could strike the rock for another time. But if the rock is already giving off water, and then he strike it again, it is like the restored Adam, symbolic of the Messiah, is struck. And this time, it is not because of God's instruction, it's because of his anger. So this is like Satan invading the Messiah. So that's why God cannot allow Moses to bring the people out of Canaan, and he appointed a new leader, even while Moses was still alive. He was one of the two tribes, or he was one of the two spies who gave positive reports during when they came back from the land of Canaan. His name is Joshua. The mission was passed on to Joshua because of his unity of heart with him. And so, we read this in the book of Joshua. Get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I am about to give them. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. And quickly Moses anointed Joshua to become the new leader. And then, true to that desire that God wants, Moses could not even go down. He died in the last mountain going down to the Jordan River. It was Joshua who actually entered the land of Canaan. And there Joshua actually established the foundation of substance. When Joshua led, the second generation pledged loyalty and unity. Be strong and of good courage. Whatever you told us, we will do. Whatever you command us, we will do. Only be strong of good courage, we will be united with you. And that's the story of how they have been when they entered the land of Canaan. The second generation actually united with Joshua, and they have many victories together in the land of Canaan. So they promised loyalty. Ito yung sinabi pala, whatever you have commanded us, we will do, and whatever you send us, we will go. Only be strong and of good courage. So finally, they can enter the land of Canaan. So this episode actually came to the land of Canaan, where they established the period of the judges. One of the mistakes of the Jewish people is that they become too concerned about each tribe, and they divided the land into each other, and then they establish a nation that is not according to what God wants. They also had committed a serious sin of taking many concubines among the tribes of the Canaanites, and they even practiced some of the traditions of the Canaanites. So they are supposed to establish a nation, but after they reached the land of Canaan, it took another 40 years before they can become truly a nation. It was after 400 years when the last of these judges anointed the first king, and they became a nation. The first king was King Saul, anointed by the prophet Samuel, the beginning of the United Kingdom. But Saul became rebellious. David became the next king. But David committed immorality. There was another king. After 3 attempts of kingship, the United Kingdom did not succeed, and then it was divided between the north and the south for 400 years. And then 400 years into the divided kingdom, they were invaded by enemies, especially by the Assyrians. And then, after that, when the northern kingdom was invaded, the southern kingdom was also invaded by the Babylonians. When the Babylonians invaded the south, they destroyed the temple that Solomon built, and they brought the people back to Babylon, the beginning of the captivity. They were captive for 70 years until Babylon was defeated by Persia. And Persia released the Jews to go back to the land of Egypt. It took 3 waves for them to go. So a period of 140 years, this period is 210. One of the leaders of the return to Israel was Malachi. And when he came back, he initiated reforms together with Ezra and also Nehemiah. And then when they came to Egypt, the last 400 years proved to be the last preparation for the coming of Jesus. Anyway, so the foundation for the Messiah was prolonged until the coming of Jesus. This is the next chapter would be Jesus' course. Okay? So thank you very much.
And in that way, at that time, we all will have rejoiced. You will have